Mora conducts physician-led support groups, helping people live healthier, happier lives, free from chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. And on our podcast, Health and Mora with Dr. Lori Marbus, we bring to you nutrition and lifestyle medicine experts and extraordinary guests to empower and inspire you with their knowledge and stories of plant-based lifestyle so that you can be your healthiest self.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marbus, and I'm excited to invite and talk about some really cool stuff with Rachael Brown. How are you today?
I'm good, Lori. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, well, thanks for joining us. I'm always excited when people are willing to share their time and expertise and, give our listeners some cool tidbits, which you have a nice history and story and a book for Fork's sake, which I was already challenged to say earlier. And but we'll get to all that in a minute. But I'd love to get kind of into your story of how you found, whole food, plant-based eating, incorporating that into your life, and especially because you had young kiddos at the time.
Yeah, sure. So I've always been interested in health. I thought I wanted to go into medicine at one point, but ended up getting a degree in geography. So kind of a switcheroo partway through college. But I ended up studying geography, doing research writing, and always had high cholesterol. That's kind of where my health story started. I was always active in sports, all of that, but I had high cholesterol that was just stubborn. It was hard to get lowered, and my doctors would tell me to cut back on cheese and cut back on eggs, and it would get a little bit better, but never really got great. And my dad was always on cholesterol medication, and I knew I didn't want to take cholesterol medication. So I just, treated it with trying to change up my diet, being different, active in different ways. But then, I was in my early 20s and I was told I should go on cholesterol medication, which was really frustrating. And then by my mid 20s, my nephew was diagnosed with cancer, and he was only 5 years old at the time. And his mom was in nursing school, and she had a professor who asked her if she'd looked at the role of nutrition in cancer. And so they started doing Gerson therapy, juicing a lot, eating raw, fresh stuff. And she told me, you should really take a look at this book, which was the China study, and watch this movie, Forks Over Knives. And they had like their own small hobby farm. They grew all their own meat. She had a great big garden, but she taught me how to pull mozzarella cheese the summer before. So they were doing that whole thing. And we had chickens at the time. But I read the China study and watched Forks Over Knives, and initially I was mad. I was just so upset that nobody had told me this incredible information. And so, for us, we decided to go all in, like, let's give this thing a try. And so got blood work, cut out everything, all the animal products, all the oil, gave up coffee. And I couldn't get back in for 17 days, but I got my blood work, went to see my doctor, and he said, what did you do? Because I couldn't do this with cholesterol medication. Your cholesterol dropped 50 points. Wow. So whatever you did, keep on doing it. And that was, I always say that was like really good news and bad news at the time, because it was quite a switch. We weren't eating a ton of meat, but, our kids were 6 and 8, and, we were eating mostly the standard American diet. So it was a big change. But my dad also, he has had high cholesterol, like I said, but he's also in the early stages of Alzheimer's. And his dad, my grandpa, had passed away from pancreatic cancer, also had Alzheimer's. My uncle died of pancreatic cancer as well. So my doctor, in addition, did some other testing, and we found out we carry the ApoE4 gene. So that was another component as to why it was really important for us to do as much as we could, finding out our genetics and that piece, and being so relieved to find out that really lifestyle and diet has so much more to say than genetics, up to 90%, right? So just, that was our journey in with our kids at 6 and 8. And it was quite the journey at the beginning.
Yeah. So how did they take it, and how did you transition them, and where are they at now?
Yeah, they actually took it really well. I would say, I tell a story in the book about the green chard smoothie that I made it was a bit much. It was like fluorescent green, and I didn't have enough lemon juice or plant. It was just a little bit much. But for the most part, I talk with a lot of people. I do consulting now with people who are new to this lifestyle, and a lot of people are really concerned about their kids, like their kids aren't going to jump on board. But I've really found in working with lots of families that kids actually adopt this way of eating a lot of times easier than adults do. They don't have a lot of the same emotional baggage or ties to food that adults do. So, for the most part, my kids were just fine. Like I said, we did the 10 days in, we got rid of everything, and we did it hard at first, like no exceptions. And I quickly realized that while it was good for me, maybe that wasn't the best approach for all of us. So we, had to play with it for a bit to find out. Because my son, I also say in the book, he went to a birthday party and had, I never remember if it was 12 hot dogs and 6 cookies or 6 hot dogs and 12 cookies. So it was like, oh, we've got to figure this out because this is going to work. Because we said, at home, we're going to eat this way. And when you go somewhere else, you can eat whatever you would like. And that was obviously not translating very well. So it took some working around, but they're now 19 and 21 away at college, and they both choose to eat this way on their own. So they feel better, they have energy that their friends don't. They didn't have acne. I mean, like all these just amazing side benefits, not to mention their blood panels being, perfect. Those things really hit home for them. And a lot of their friends have also transitioned. So it's been fun to watch the ripple effect.
No, that's great. Yeah. So mine were 13, 15, 18, 11 years ago.
Okay.
And they all choose, to maintain this diet, to varying degrees. I'd say, occasional, especially but it's also interesting what was their interest. But, I was just going to say occasionally, I think Emily might have cheese or something, depending on where she's going. But, Emily is the oldest. She's like more of the climate issue. That was kind of her compelling reason. The middle one's like, it's just the healthy thing to do. And the youngest one is kind of more the ethical vegan. So, each kid's going to have their own journey, and I totally get that and totally appreciate that for sure. So
yeah, I love it. You're covering all the bases there.
Yeah. So I was very proactive because I had older kids, was really looking at what documentaries I could have them watch and just really try to parcel out what would be important for them so that they can commit to that emotional piece, because I feel like that's where the really main drivers for changing behaviors is having some emotional component beliefs. Yes, I identify as someone who cares about my environment, so why should I be doing things that aren't aligning with those beliefs? And that really seems to make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. I point people in the direction of all the amazing documentaries that are out there these days. And, a lot of them are really great for kids to watch too, especially teenagers, but even young kids that, I don't know if you've seen the orangutan video, it's like a cartoon that was an ad for, I believe it was peanut butter and like palm oil. And it's just this like 3-minute cartoon. You can look it up. And it's great for elementary kids. And it's like once they connect in their mind, like, oh, when I eat peanut butter with oil in it, that's killing, that's the home of orangutans. And I don't want to do that, and it's like a hard stop for a lot of kids once they see that. So you're right. Finding that connection point, what matters to them is important for all of us, really.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like all kids are such animal lovers.
Yes.
That's an easy win as well. Just looking at it. Some of those Facebook videos that have the little ones saying, I don't want to eat a chicken anymore. Why is there a lobster in the stove? It's like they suddenly understand.
Yes.
Like, yes. Why don't we all understand that? So
definitely. Yeah. I really believe if we all had to kill our own chicken every night, to cook it there, we'd be eating a lot less chicken.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree. Well, tell us a little bit more about, For Fork's Sake and how that came about and what was your inspiration to write it.
Yeah. So, I was doing, I went back to school for massage, gosh, now about 12 years ago. And I had taught yoga and Pilates when the kids were young, and went back to school for that. And then actually, I had a client who told me about this amazing massage he'd received actually on Maui, and how she did this amazing technique that healed his back. And so long story short, I eventually went and studied with this doctor in Colorado, and it was called the pain neutralization technique. And it really it helped people get out of chronic pain. And so it was neurological work, was using your brain to turn off pain signals. And that's what I've been doing up until I wrote the book, which was really up until COVID hit and I couldn't see clients. But it was really fascinating work and I loved it. But once COVID hit and I couldn't see clients, I went back and got my plant-based nutrition certificate from the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. And I was trying to figure out what is the best way to disseminate this information. Because I knew a lot of people over the years, we would hand out the China study, we would hand out Forks Over Knives, How Not to Die, some of these seminal books, and people wouldn't pick them up and read them. They were more apt to watch a documentary, but a lot of people I knew, wouldn't sit down and read that book. And when I talked to young families, a lot of parents just kept saying, I don't have time to read. I really don't read a lot anymore. I maybe read some blogs, but I'm just overwhelmed. And so that's when it kind of dawned on me that maybe if I wrote a book that was just enough information, kind of the why is this good for our bodies? Why is this good for the planet? And then a quick how-to, taking everything we learned in those initial 10 years and just put it down into a 10-day, like, give this a go kind of thing. Keep it light, make it an easy read, that maybe that would reach a different audience of people who I hope will move on to read the China study, but maybe who wouldn't initially pick up that book. So that's what I set out to do. And really just wove in our story of, what it looked like for us to transition and the tips and tricks that I wish I would have had. It's really the book I wish I would have had 13 years ago when we made the transition. So that was my goal. And it's been really fun. Just, every week I get an email from at least one person saying how they've made this transition, and, either they tried before and it didn't work, or this is their first time, and just all the amazing benefits that they're experiencing. It's just been so gratifying.
So it's like a manual for like a 10-day jumpstart, so to speak.
Yeah, it is. I outlined it, there's a day zero. So like what you need to know before you start. And then it is a really quick read. I mean, the audiobook is 4 hours long. So you can read this thing on a flight if you want. And, I would suggest reading all the way through and then going back and going through, but it is outlined in like day 1 through 10. And really just giving you some steps, from cleaning out your kitchen, your house, and if that's not your personality style, how else you can go about doing this. How to get family on board, how to talk to people who are doubters, it starts really with all those questions everybody gets. Page 5 is the where do you get your protein? So you can quickly have an answer for all those people wondering where you're getting protein.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what is, so some of the recurring questions that we get from patients is really that family piece, right? So someone lives in my house who doesn't want to transition to a plant-based diet, has no interest, maybe there's a bit of sabotage occurring. What do you do? How do you coach people to deal with those type of difficult situations?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say kudos to those people, because it's difficult sometimes with people who are all on board, who are wanting to have a tempting snack or, some vegan junk food or something. So I'm always so impressed with people who are the lone wolf in their house, going at this. But there are some tricks to employ. So whether you have your own space for your food and you just, you're not going to go into that other cupboard that has the chips or, that part of the freezer with the ice cream or whatever, that can be helpful. But one of my favorites is a woman I worked with, and she told a story about her husband didn't want to transition to this way of eating. They were a little bit older and she was the primary cook and he didn't cook. And so she was making all this amazing, rainbow colored food, fruits and vegetables and grains, all this beautiful food. And so what she did was she would still buy the meat that he wanted, but instead of presenting it like she usually did, she would just boil it in water and put it on a plate for him. And I was like, that is the best idea ever. And, she did that and he ate it a few times and then was like, this doesn't even look good. I'll have some of what you're having. So that was honestly my favorite. I've never tried that myself, but I think that's probably the best. Yeah, that was a source of inspiration for me.
Oh my gosh, that is a woman after my own heart. I love
Right.
it.
I thought she was kind to keep doing it. I mean, I personally would probably just say, well, you're on your own, then you need to cook your own food. But
Yes,
I
yes,
thought it was a
yes.
really great.
Yeah, I do remind patients, you're not a short order cook. And
Yes.
what's
Yes.
really funny is getting back around, circumventing back to the kids, is they'll say, but my kids won't eat this way. So, they're eating this. I'm like, well, how old are your children? Thinking they're like teenagers driving, have their jobs. Oh,
Right.
they're like 4 and 6. I'm like, where did
Right.
we forget to parent in this world?
Yes.
Where did we
Yes.
learn to understand that you are making these decisions and they have profound implications for your child's health, their future?
For sure.
So I was like, so
Yeah.
who's driving to go buy the McDonald's chicken nuggets? Ah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we sat down and made a list of our favorite foods as a family. So
Mm,
ask your kids, what do they love to eat? If it's macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets, you can actually make those out of
mhm,
plant-based foods. So
mhm,
just pick 3 or 4 of their favorite meals and make those same meals plant-based, and sure, it won't taste exactly the same in the beginning, but within 10 days, 2 weeks, when their taste buds are changing, those become their favorites. I mean, my kids classically, they loved mac and cheese. And that was like a treat out of the box that they would get when we had a babysitter or something. And I made plant based macaroni and cheese. And then they would go to a friend's house and go, oh, I can't wait. We're going to have macaroni and cheese. And they'd come home and say, it didn't even taste as good as I remember. It doesn't taste as good as ours. So taste buds really change, and really rapidly. So yes, and to your point, not allowing kids to drive the bus of how eating is happening in your family. I think now, so many families are so busy and there's tablets and devices, and really keeping that dinner time, especially breakfast as well, if you can, sit down time so that you're not distracted. You can actually sit there and eat good food. You can have conversation. I put some games in the book too that we did with our kids at the dinner table. So just to keep it fun for varying ages, even adults, we do high, low, and what the heck of the day.
mhm.
Um, Even young kids love that. They get to talking and they're interested in listening. And if you're actually hungry, that's another thing for kids. If they've had a string cheese and goldfish crackers at 4 p.m. and they've been sitting watching TV, they're probably not going to be hungry for a, plant-based minestrone soup. But
Mm.
if they were out running around and they had some fruit or veggies and they're actually hungry, or they helped make the meal, they're a lot more apt to be excited about the plant-based dinner that's on the table that night.
No, I love that. You absolutely, because a child that's involved will be more likely apt to eat those foods for sure. But just kind of circling back to the food and sitting down at your table and getting rid of the distractions, turning off the TV, removing the phone. Because remember, there's an art of listening. So when you're having conversation at a table, being engaged in the art of conversation, but also being good listeners and good rescinders, right? So those kids are learning valuable skills that will help them interact with others when you're sitting down at the table. So think of it not only as time to grow those familial relationships, but you're teaching your kids skills that they'll need to join the rest of the world outside of your home. And these are skills that are lost, right? So I think people are always surprised when we run into people who really truly listen, right? So they're responding to you, they're saying back to you what they've heard, they're asking questions to probe deeper. And those are people, even if those are brief interactions with strangers or someone that's a dear friend, you treasure those moments because it just doesn't happen as much now in this very Zoom artificial world that we live in. So just
Uh,
to keep that in mind.
I couldn't agree more. It's so
Yeah.
true. And it really stands out. Like you said, when you have a conversation, especially with a younger person, somebody
Yes.
under the age of 24, let's say, who can actually look you in the eyes and listen and have a conversation, it really stands out because, yeah, things have changed, and that's not a skill that everybody has these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, getting back to cooking in the kitchen together, learning your family recipes, learning to not be afraid to mess up in the kitchen. It doesn't mean you failed in life. It's just the kitchen. No one's
Good
grading you.
point.
It's not a life and death situation here. It's okay. And we're a very competitive family. So close knit but very competitive family, and there are really fun stories with that. But the one thing that I used transitioning, because I still cooked at home, but I gave them the freedom of thumbs up, thumbs down, or kind of thumb level.
Mhm.
And so in the beginning, of course, it was just the true joy to see my aghast face. And was like, bad mom, this isn't good. Thumbs down. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Mhm.
I'm upping my cooking game. So that's when you start learning. So it was really fun for me to learn more skills of flavor and cooking, but also seeing them not say anything and go back for seconds. I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, I won that one. So it's all good. I gloat to myself. It's all good. But yeah.
Oh, yes, for sure. I'm with you on that. My son still to this day says he doesn't like sweet potatoes. And I have to bite my tongue because his favorite enchiladas are sweet potato enchiladas. His favorite brownies are sweet potato brownies. And I mean, it was like a running joke
Oh
because I
my
would say,
gosh.
we're sitting down for dinner, like, do you want to know what's in this? And he's like, no, don't tell me. I want to
That's
like
so
it.
funny. Oh my goodness. Yes. I'm like, whatever works, whatever works.
Yep.
I will I will speak your language if that works for you.
Yes,
We know what's the truth.
exactly. Exactly.
Oh, that's great. So what is some of, besides, where do you get your protein? What are some of the other more common questions if someone's, considering going plant-based or is just in this beginning phases? What are some of the struggles and questions that you feel your book helps them prepare, or where you feel like you could give some advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think these days there's so much noise out there as to what's healthy. And there's confusion really about what are plant-based foods, even starting there, breaking down what does whole food, plant-based, no oil really mean? And, the first question usually I get is like, well, what do you even eat?
Right.
Or I don't like salads, and I'm like, you never have to have a salad if you don't want. You can, there's so many other foods that you can eat. Um, so really breaking down what do whole foods look like. So,
Mm,
just because corn is processed in mixed with oil into a corn chip doesn't mean that that's a good food to be eating. So
mm,
talking about what real food is, and just because it has a plant-based label or organic label doesn't mean it's going to be good for you. So that's probably the biggest thing. Second to that would be, well, you mean bad oils, right? Like olive oil is a good oil, so it can have olive oil, So the discussion around oils and what they do to our bodies, and
mhm.
and how our bodies work with whole foods as opposed to processed foods or foods that have had things extracted or added to them. And yeah, just a discussion about what fits into those categories. So
Mm,
really helping people understand the plethora of food that they can eat. I mean, there's so many, it seems limiting at first to people when all they're buying is meat and cheese and oil and processed food. But, once you leave those aisles and wander the periphery of the grocery store or go to your farmer's market or order online or whatever, I mean, even just looking at grains, the types of grains there are for people to explore and, like you said, have fun with in the kitchen. It might not work out perfect the first time. I spoke with a woman last week who said when she went to the store the first time, she asked them where the kua onwa was. And they were like,
quinoa.
I think you mean quinoa. So giving yourself some grace and going, you know what, you're gonna figure it out.
Right.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
just having fun with all the options out there. So really just putting some definitions around the terms for people up front is helpful to understand, what are we trying to do here?
No, those are very good points. I think coming back to the processed foods that you mentioned and understanding what whole foods are, because in the beginning, when you're helping patients transition and they'll go and eat the plant-based processed foods, which there's much more of that available now than there was even 10, 11 years ago. But it's fascinating to me. They're like, I don't understand why I'm not losing weight. I'm eating this, and it's like, oh, it's the Impossible Burgers and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, sorry, maybe that was my fault for not explaining, but that's a very good place to start, is understanding the closer it came from Mother Earth, the better. That's the piece that we
Definitely.
miss. Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Absolutely.
has, like you said, really changed in the last, 13 years ago, it people didn't really know the term whole food plant-based for sure, but even vegan, they were unclear as to like what that
Mm,
was. But yeah, it's, I would say in some ways more difficult now because there
yes.
are all these products or things that look like they would be okay.
Yeah.
And I talk about using some of those transition foods for people who maybe wouldn't make a jump immediately. But yeah, the sooner you can get away from processed foods, and arguably they're better for the environment in some ways, but long term, I'm not sure how much better really when we're creating packaged stuff. There's
Yeah.
just so much you can do with real food.
Right.
And for a lot of people too, I work with, I mean, all ages of people, but for young families looking to save money on groceries, you're probably not going to save money if you transition from the standard American diet to a bunch of processed plant-based foods. But
Mhm.
if you're transitioning to whole foods, you can literally fill your grocery cart with all the fruits and vegetables, legumes, grains, even nuts, cashews and macadamia nuts, even.
Mhm.
Um, Seeds, all those things, spices, and you'll still come out ahead if you're leaving all that meat and dairy and oil. Those are the most expensive things in your grocery cart. So once you get rid of those and put real whole plant-based foods in your cart, you'll come out ahead.
And not only that, I remind patients, to sign up for those grocery store discount cards. What's really interesting is over time, they only send you coupons based on your buying history. So if
Yeah.
all you're buying is in the produce section, guess what? You're going to get, I've had 5, 10, 15, sometimes even $20 off of produce section. Like, here, come back and we'll give you $20 off this, whatever. Frozen fruits and vegetables, canned beans, all the grains. Yeah. So I never get anything that's junk food or processed because I never buy that. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I think though occasionally I get one for like an Amy's pizza or something, because we do have that on occasion, the cheeseless pizza, the veggie pizza one. So
Yeah.
yeah, so those that's like the worst of it. We pile more vegetables on that even. So
Right.
again, those
Yep.
are the wonderful things that you can start seeing. But yeah, absolutely. It's called a pauper's diet for a reason.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think I get hummus. That's my, if I'm not
yeah,
making it home, I'll get the hummus thing. But yeah, it's all
yep,
vegetables or fruit, which is so great.
100%.
The other thing I talk about too is you don't have to live near, there's this misconception that you need to live near a Whole Foods or a
Right.
specialty store. And I really love that you could eat this way if you just have a Dollar Tree near you.
Mhm.
They have grains, they have beans, they have frozen vegetables often. You can find stuff and you can make it work really wherever you're at. So,
Mhm.
kind of dispelling the myth that you need to, there's some kind of elite diet or something. Really just going, no, that's a lifestyle that civilizations have existed on for millennia. So we just need to get back to that.
Yeah, no, I would say when you're speaking to dollars, I think the most expensive piece is going to be your spices. And so if you're
Mhm.
investing in those spices, but if you go to like Indian stores or Mexican stores or Asian markets, you're going to get those even much cheaper bulk wise. So just thinking about where you're buying, Whole Foods is going to be adding extraordinarily a large amount of profit. So avoiding holds. But when we transitioned, we lived in Western Colorado in a town called Rifle. It was like 10,000 people,
Mhm.
rural Colorado, and we had a Walmart and we had a Kroger's. And so literally these are just your normal, typical everyday grocery stores you're going to find. Now, there are food deserts, obviously, that's more of a challenge, and that speaks to a whole other problem
Yep.
in our food system in those neighborhoods being really focused in on junk food and
Mhm.
yeah, so that's a whole nother separate conversation. But when we speak to the majority, there's usually a grocery store, especially if you can drive within a distance, a reasonable distance. So
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the more fun things that you like to do, maybe favorite recipes or things that your kids have really resonated with that they like to talk about other than the sweet potato yumminess that you have going on?
Yeah, it's funny because when I was writing the book, I asked my daughter, and she was like 18 or 19. I said, what are some of the foods that you miss?
Mm,
And she thought for a minute. She's like, I don't have any foods that I miss. This is kind of
mm,
speaking to that, like, kids transition easier. And I was like, I thought she'd maybe say, oh, turkey meatloaf or something that she used to like when she was young. And
mm,
she's like, no, I like all our versions of what we eat now better than anything. So it is fun when they come home from college. They just want home cooking, things that we
mm,
always do. And I would say some favorites. We make pizza also, with no cheese and all that. We eat a fair amount of cashew cheese. We go like cashew cheese or oat cheese, depending on our activity level. But we've taken to not even using pizza crust. We just use whole wheat pitas,
mhm,
and everybody gets to make their individual pizzas. So I make a bunch of pesto when it's, basil is abundant at the farmer's market. I just stick it in the freezer. Um, and we love that on pizzas, and then whatever veggies sound good. One of the processed foods, I guess, we will splurge on, but it doesn't have oil. It's No Evil's Italian sausage. I don't know if you've had
mm.
that, but
No.
made with all plants, all things that you can read and you would recognize. So we'll sometimes splurge on that to put on
Mm,
our pizzas along with green peppers and mushrooms. And
mm,
so that's a favorite. Also bowls. I mean, you just really can't go wrong, especially with kids, when they have choice in what they get to eat,
mm,
that can be really helpful. So um, whether it's a rice or a quinoa, whatever you use as your base for a starch, or potatoes, sometimes we use baked potatoes, then just having this rainbow of options for them to choose from. And then having some sauces, whether it's a cashew ranch or a tahini dressing, or our standard is just mustard and maple syrup mixed together. Easiest dressing in the world. Learned about that from the McDougalls, and super simple. So those are some go-tos for sure.
yes, I actually love the brown mustard, maple syrup, and garlic powder. Oh
Yes.
my goodness,
Yeah,
it's
so
delicious.
good.
That's I learned that from the Shane and Simple website. I interviewed
Okay.
him,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's some yummy recipes on that website. Mm-mm-mm.
Yes. Yes. Well, and so versatile. I mean, you can put it on so
Oh
many things, right?
yes,
Salads,
it's like a honey
bowls.
mustard
Yeah.
flavor.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Right. Yep.
Mm-mm-mm. Yep, it's making me hungry right now.
I
But
know.
I just, for lunch I had a chickpea salad, and for the mayo I used it was a cashew base, but it just had lemon juice. It had garlic, some onion powder, it had some mustard powder,
Mhm.
some water. Oh, I use aquafaba.
Mhm.
What else is in there? A few different things, and it's that tanginess. I never
Yeah.
liked mayo
Yeah.
before, so I never ate it, but I'd eat it like in egg salad or whatever if I ever had that very often. But yeah, so there you go. Putting some dill in that chickpea salad and onions and red bell
Mhm.
pepper. Yeah, so honestly, the food is so much more beautiful, I think, for me
Mhm.
visually. I feel like that's a big piece too. Um,
It really is. Some of my kids never liked salad dressing. Like, they
mm,
kind of liked ranch, but they didn't, even that they didn't love. So, yeah, finding some dressings that work that they liked. There's a great coleslaw. Right, it's
mm,
a cashew base too, but it is incredible, and we will make that almost once a week in the summer. It's just
mhm,
incredible. But yeah, you're right. The colors, the rainbow of colors on the salad. I mean, we're visual people, so I think that really does help. Yeah, just to awaken all the senses, and the taste. I mean, I tell the story about my son when we were having pitas, and he bit into one, and he was like, oh my gosh, where did you get these red peppers? And I was like, there's the same red peppers. I'm like racking my brain, like, it's the same thing, but we were really cutting down. I mean, he had high cholesterol at age 10. He carries the same gene that I do, as does my dad. And so we'd been plant-based at that point for 2 years, but at school he would like come home with snacks, all this stuff, and he loved peanut butter and avocados, so we were eating a lot of the higher fat plant-based foods. So we were cutting back, and I realized we were about 8 to 10 days into really cutting out any fats, extra fats, and that's when that red pepper tasted so sweet to him, and it was like his taste buds were just reawakening, really. I'd pick him up from school and he'd come out with a cookie for his sister, like, we got another treat, for something, because he was really eliminating them for a time. But it was really fascinating during that time just to watch how his taste buds refined even more. So yeah, I think now, eating a fresh peach in the summer or some red pepper, I mean, those beautiful foods that just taste so incredible.
My favorite, well, there's two things: Palisade Peaches from Colorado.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. And you will become a peach snob. You just walk into owning that this is what I am. I'm a peach snob, gotta have Palisade Peaches. But yeah, I totally get that. And then love persimmons. So when we get to that time of year,
yes. Yeah. And I hadn't had a persimmon, that I remember until we moved to California. We have a neighbor up the road who has a tree and she just puts out a box. So we eat persimmons for like a month and a half, just fresh every day. Yeah, they are incredible.
I need some new neighbors that grow some trees. Yeah, so that's amazing. Persimmons. So yeah. Fantastic. Well, wonderful. Well, tell us where we can find your book, where we can find you, where people connect, should they like to engage with any of your services that you offer.
Sure. My website is www.forforksakebook.com. And on there you can access the book. The book is all over. It's on Amazon. You can get it online, Barnes & Noble, all those places, some select bookstores. Paperback, hardcover, and there's an audiobook as well for people. A lot of people ask for that, so I did that, and like I said, it's 4 hours long, so that's like 4 walks or something. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at For Forks Sake Book, and you can sign up for my newsletter on my website if you want. I send out weekly tips, tricks, recipes, happenings. And I donate 50% of the profits from the book, the sale of the book, to charity, and 1% goes to 1% for the planet. So this really is my attempt at giving back. I mean, our family reversed heart disease, and we're healthy because of the changes that we made. And I really want every human, every family to experience the benefits of what plants can do. So it's my attempt at really trying to help people on the planet with this book.
That is lovely sentiment and a wonderful place to end this great conversation. So thank you for your time and writing this book. And I'm sure many people, especially we get a lot of beginners listening to the podcast, or maybe docs who are looking for resources to refer to patients. So this would be a good one. Everyone, there'll be links also in the description below. So thank you for listening. And thank you, Rachael, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Lori. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Before you go though, please hit the subscribe and alert buttons so you don't miss out on any of the amazing content we're working so hard to provide you. We upload a new episode of Health and More with Dr. Lori Marbas every Friday. Now, if you'd rather listen to the podcast, you can find us on all the major platforms such as iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and even Spotify. If you're looking for amazing resources to help you start and sustain a plant-based diet, exercise, recipes, or anything wellness, we got you covered there too. Because at Mora, we actually provide physician-led support groups to help people live happier, healthier lives free of metabolic disease. Don't forget to check out our website at mora.com, and thanks again for watching.